All right, perfect. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and get to the most important part. These four amazing folks. So let me just stop sharing. Perfect. And Matt, when you were talking about what you're doing at HP, that really perked my interest. And I wanted to start with you to just kind of, it sounds like this is like very relevant to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis here, but why do you think, or at least from your experience and what you're seeing, that why is it that HR and IT seem to kind of avoid each other in some circumstances? And I'd love to just get your take on that and where, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, yes. First of all, it's true. We tend to just as in any environment where you've got a lot of really smart people working towards a goal, and sometimes those goals aren't exactly the same. Then there tends to be walls or silos, that get built up. But I think in the case of HR and IT, it's in our names, right? It's human resources and information technology. And so the human side of it says, I'm a helping hand. I'm here to help. How to high touch. I want to solve. I want to make things easier for you. I want to make your life easier as an employee because I know that if I do that, you'll stick with us as a company, and that's a win-win-win. In all cases. On the IT side, then it's the technology where we like structure and logic and repetitive, cues, single threading our way through things. Whereas, HR is, hey, I'm going to help all the people all the time. And I think, I think of back in the 80s, musically speaking, there was the the evolution of drums. And you could have a human drummer, there's your human resources, or you could have a drum machine, there's your IT. 100% reliable all the time, could play for days, right? Never lose the beat. That human drummer, yeah, I don't know if you can rely on them. Well, we lost it. So that's the parallel I kind of see. And then I see, even though we're in our silos, we like to help each other in ways that the other side doesn't really appreciate. So HR likes to come to IT with a solution. Here's what I need. Can you build it? IT wants to know what's the problem? Like what are we trying to solve? And then flip that over on the IT side. We're like, oh, I think I know what you're trying to do. Hey, look, I prototyped it. Is it wait, hey, oh, slow down, slow down. So it's I think that's where I see it. It's really in the name, the human versus the technology, and that's where the walls tend to go up, even though we're both trying to solve really the same problems.
Oh, I love that. I think that I love the drum machine analogy. I feel like that's somehow going to float into some sort of reflection of this conversation after the fact. I'm going to be thinking about it. Then all the gray area in between of like those that use the humans that use the drum machines to benefit
Yeah,
themselves and the technologies that can evolve from it. And then the humans that are great drummers. And anyway, there it is, right? Here's the topic that we're talking about. Jan, I wanted to get your take on this, listening to everything that Matt just kind of reflected on and in your own experience, and just what exactly, what are you seeing as well?
Well, I'm not as musical as Matt. In fact, I'm pretty terrible at it, but I agree with what he said about it's well about a different approach. And I think it all comes down to communication. I mean, if you think about how HR approaches things, we always talk about employee engagement, onboarding experience, things like that. And how does IT approach this? They talk about integration, scalability, and we're kind of working towards the same goal, or marching towards the beat of the same drum. How about that? See, I knew I could tie it in if I thought about it for a second. But the idea is that we're approaching from different standpoints, right? We're thinking about people, right? People always forget that HR, the H stands for human, not for anything else. And so we think about the human experience more so than we do about integration or scalability or even cost efficiency sometimes. So I come at it from an accounting background, so I always think about the bottom line, but a lot of HR leaders, I feel like they don't. And I also think that kind of along the same lines, there's a little bit about the cultural differences that we have. So HR always focuses on human dynamics, and we focus on what's important to us. And I think qualitative comes second. For IT, it's really the end results, right? Show me how you modeled it, as Matt kind of was pointing out. So you really need more collaboration and a little bit more about trying to find the common language instead of trying to find new differences. And that's how we're going to make it better.
I love that. So we've kind of set the stage now. Thank you, Matt and Jan, for doing just that. And now let's talk about the good, right? So what exactly, when it does work, when HR and IT are actually working in a collaborative and success-minded way, what does that actually look like? Angelina, I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, sure. And building on what was just heard, that it all comes like we're working together. So I would say what looks like as a good collaboration would be the end result, really, the business efficiency, making it seamless. So when something doesn't work, everybody in the organization hears about it, right? So if it's a new tech solution, if the users are not happy, are not using it, or if the collaboration between the two departments is not working, there is a big noise around it. And then if I can recall a very practical example from the last such big collaboration we had between HR and IT, would be the rollout of our new HRIS. And I'm talking about 46,000 employees globally. You can imagine how good or wrong that would go. So having real, from the beginning, alignment on what do we want to achieve, what is the end result, what is the business efficiencies that we want to bring in, and actually discovering that yes, we do have the same end users, the employees, right, of the same products that we want to roll out and offer to the organization. I think that was one of the exemplary, let's say, I would say, collaborations between the two departments, and really the success and adoption up to this day of system is speaking about the success of it and the good collaboration.
I love that.
Yeah.
Bill, my assumption is you have a ton of experience in this as well, and would love to kind of get your perspective, kind of bouncing off of what Angelina just said, and what you're seeing out there in the workforce as well.
I think everybody's hit on good points, Matt, Jan, and Angelina. And I think from my perspective, I've been with MSCI 10 years. I've been managing effectively the IT world for about six or seven. Right before COVID, things kind of is when I started to take responsibility for this function. And I would say honestly, COVID changed everything from what we were doing, as it's changed everything for a lot of people at that time, for sure. But for me, what changed significantly was the fact that we started thinking about employees as people, to the points that Matt and Jan were making, right? And it became very clear that we had a number of, you run into all sorts of situations where people have unique needs, and you need to figure out how you're going to solve for them, right? So ultimately, that was the mindset that I went into, that shifted, I would say, with me as we sort of entered into COVID. And that has really stuck, because now we start to think about the employee experience. We think about the employee experience with everything that we do, whether it's a communication and how they understand it, or an interaction with a particular system and how that is going to work. And we had some significant partnerships with HR on a couple of different fronts. One, especially as COVID sort of was ramping up, was what we termed as our future of work steering committee, right? And so I think things start at the top. If you have a CHRO and an IT leader who are working together and talking and communicating consistently, and you have, in my view, an IT leader who is thinking about people and their experience, then you're going to be able to have successful outcomes as a partnership. And in our future of work example, we started to implement some tools that gave us more insights into how people were working, or were managers meeting with their teams on a regular basis, and we had some technology data points that actually helped us formulate some strategies to help managers adjust and cope better with what they had to deal with, especially as I keep mentioning during COVID. And I would say a second example, which was super, super helpful, was we have what we would term as employee resource groups at MSCI, and that focus on various different um, areas where we want people paying attention to, or give people an opportunity to pay attention to. And we have one ERG that we refer to as all abilities. And this is basically people who may have specific challenges, physical or mental, where we want to make sure that they're aware of accommodations, right? So again, it comes back to experience, the employee experience, but also knowing that and working with HR, and that was a great partnership because they were leading that employee resource group. But the fact was that we knew and learned that people wouldn't necessarily tell us that they have a challenge that they need to overcome. And so in my original mindset was, well, if somebody has a problem, they'll tell us about it and we'll give them the solution. And it became much more about, okay, how do we just advertise these solutions that are available and let people start to take advantage of it and then come back to us. So those are two great examples where we partner really well with HR, just from the general IT point of view, to improve that employee experience.
Wow. Can I throw in a now example that we've got happening right now, which I found was very fascinating as I rejoined HP last year. Was we're using we're a Microsoft shop using the Microsoft tool sets, and one of the things that we're sort of pioneering here is Copilot, the AI assistant, and pointing it at a lot of our HR policies. And they have, in a very forward-thinking, forward-looking way, enabled everybody in our HR organization to do it, to use it with license, given everybody a license and said, okay, go forth, let's figure out how to use this thing to make our lives in HR easier. And it's really amazing what people have come up with. Just the ability to mine and ask, conversationally ask questions of your policy documentation. Incredible.
Yeah, Matt, that's a great point. We also are a very Microsoft-oriented shop. We have Copilot available to a number of our employees as well, and that's been one of the primary use cases we've been looking to solve for, and have dabbled in a couple of different possible solutions that give not just HR staff but employees the ability to self-service and get better information quicker, right, through a generative AI type of conversational question. I would say also on the flip side of it, there's a lot of advantages HR staff can get with AI, right, in terms of interrogating data and things of that nature. And on that front, I would say we've been much slower to progressing. There's a lot of concerns from a legal and privacy point of view about kind of having that type of data up in, even if it's considered secure, up in those types of AI solutions that are out there.
Yeah. I'm so triggered now to chip in as well, because this conversation about Copilot rollout and AI and security so really triggers, I think, also the topic of trust, and how we work together. It's we also roll out, obviously, Copilot in the organization, and the amount of debate I I hit when I tried to formulate the rollout for HR, because we want to create, apart from the user training, our own use cases, our own functional capabilities as HR Europe. So it was like very safeguarded. No, this belongs to IT. You cannot touch it. And it's like, okay, I'm not. But how can we? We want to use it, and when can you use it? And since so, I think this is a great example of the mentalities and kind of obstacles we see from the past, also touching about how the leadership is engaged and enabling this collaboration to take effect in the organization, and how much more we need to be ready, really a call out for readiness on how these two functions need to collaborate going forward, because we're going to be seeing with AI coming in such a big discussion about what tech solutions should we deploy, who should have access, what are the security, and so on and so on. So just thanks for bringing this up. I think it's a good example.
I love this conversation. And I think you mentioned something right at the top of your response, Angelina, which was about trust. And I am such a proponent of, it's like these small micro moments that happen throughout your work life that sort of make for setting the stage for these bigger strategic decisions that everyone's talking about here. And, like what Bill was talking about post-COVID, which is sort of like reframing how you look at things. And I guess I really want to ask Jan in terms of like building that trust and like what exactly that looks like and how to be successful in doing so from like that day-to-day basis. I'd love, Jan, for example, for you to kind of start that part of the conversation.
Well, thank you. So I'm not in the Microsoft environment. I'm more in the Google environment, but I can still add some value here. And I can talk to you a little bit about how we build things. So this is great. So what we do in the beginning is we want to make sure that everyone is clear on all the objectives and what we're trying to achieve and how we're going to get to it. And the way we do this is we create these joint task forces between HR, IT, and any other stakeholders to bring them all in the room together. So, 12 weeks into the project, you don't really start hearing, wait, that's not what we talked about. We want to make sure we have really, really clear goal. How do you do that? We also have regular sync meetings. And nobody needs more meetings on their calendars. God knows I don't. But at the same time, you need to be able to just kind of every week or two, just check in and say, are we still on schedule? Are we still doing the same thing? Because nobody likes surprises, good or bad, honestly. Like, you don't want surprises. And so in those meetings, what we want to do is we want to be very streamlined, and we want to make sure that we don't talk about random things. So we kind of focus on shared metrics and dashboards. So you think about what it is that we're trying to do and how are we tracking against that. And those things are not just numbers and graphs on the screen, but they really allow you to understand which way you're going and where you're lacking, where you're lagging, and what it is that you need to do to really bring everyone in the same room. At the same time, people are going to bring their own points of view into this. And once they see something, they're going to bring something right before it becomes a bigger problem. And by doing so, we create better collaboration. We also, so in HR, we really believe in documentation. So I really believe in documenting everything and making sure that we take good notes and we understand how everything is working, right? So everything is documented, every part of the process. The next steps are very clear, and we know where we are. So I think the one thing IT would always agree with us on is creating little pilot programs before you really roll it out to the entire team. And this just happened to us in my company, Augusto. So they asked us to introduce a new procedure to all of our clients. And I sent an email to 20 clients letting them know that this is what we're going to do. And guess what? Somebody forgot to test it. So, and I started getting all my clients saying, oh, wait a minute, but there's a spinning wheel when I try to do this and I can't save it. And I'm like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And then the next person said that, and the third person. And I talked to our program manager, and she said, well, we tested, it worked in the demo environment. But basically, the plan was to add us as limited admins to their account. But because we all, as users, have super admins, it didn't really work. So it broke the process. And this is where, and of course, I jumped the gun. I was the first one to do it. The other consultants like me did not do that. And so I had to send a lot of mea culpa letters to my clients because it just sometimes you screw up. And so the pilot program is really what made me think about it. You really need to have a good pilot program. And most importantly, when something happens, you want to celebrate your wins together with IT, with HR, and celebrate, think of the rigor methodology, right? The Scrum methodology, right? Celebrate small wins. Hey, we delivered this. Yay, us. And this really does wonders for the company, for your organization, and for individuals who worked on it so very hard. And so when you do all of that, I think it really helps you with a rollout. So that's it from me. I'll let somebody else talk about this now.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. That's actually, I think, focusing on the celebration aspect of things is an untapped win for an entire organization. Just to anything that you can do that can advocate, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you, goes just, makes a very long lasting impact for anyone. And I challenge anyone to disagree with that. I mean, that's the stuff right there. Matt, so it's kind of taking off. I'm sorry, Bill, taking off of, let's see, let's see here. I apologize. I did say the right name, Matt. My brain got ahead of me.
No worries. No worries at all.
Jan was talking a little bit about these micro moments when things, go well, but then also how without the proper type of planning and, getting ahead of yourself before that excitement kind of takes control, things can go sideways fairly quickly. So, Matt, I loved kind of your, without having to get too granular or specific, just like what do you see in sort of like when that has gone south? How, what does that look like? Are there any examples you could provide to say like how we corrected the ship, et cetera?
Well, I think, tying into what Jan had mentioned, early on in the trust aspect of things is that early involvement with all the liars in one room, concept where everybody knows, what's going on, and you keep that going. Now, even though you do that, even though you do all the right things, everybody's involved at the right times, and you know what's going on, something can still pop up. Example that I've got from my personal history back when I was on the IT side was we were doing a conversion, a rollout of conversion over to a new applicant tracking system for recruiting. And so we had whenever you're, especially in the recruiting space, you're trying to figure out how are we gonna cut over, because we've got recs that are open that people are applying to, and you can't just do a hard cutover. So we do this sort of dovetail thing where we try to tail off on the old system, try to ramp up on the new system, but you do have to decide on, okay, no more. Old system, no more. New system, now. Here's where we're at. And when we did that cutover, one of the decisions that I made as part of the conversion process on the IT side was we wanted to uniquely identify the old job requisitions. We only brought a few of them over to the new system, but we had to bring some over and had to bring some baggage with us. And one of the decisions I made in terms of uniquely identifying those recs made them not able to be applied to on the new system when we actually flipped the switch and turned it on. And the root cause ended up being a pipe character that was really the real problem there. But the good part about what did even though we had everybody involved, and that is for the actual cutover, we took the effort to bring the business team, the HR team, the IT team, key members of that, all to one physical location for the actual cutover. And so we were immediately able to jump on it, immediately involve the vendor because that's who ultimately was going to help us figure out what really was going on, because it was a SaaS system. And so we were able to all be there, jump on it, get it figured out. It was quite a head scratcher for several hours there. And then finally, oh, okay. All right. And now how do we remediate this in a way that doesn't stop everything else? And that's how we took care of it. So the lessons learned out of that were testing, of course, in all the scenarios with the right personas, without the super user capabilities. And also, another thing that we found really valuable, even though it takes time and money to do it, is the concept of a dry run, which is every single step of the cutover with every participant performing that step in as close to the real environment as you can, so that when you do get there, it's going to take that long. We might run into this. What are we going to do about it? Who do we need to involve? You already have an inkling of what needs to happen. And man, when we started doing those, things went so much smoother.
Oh, I love that. Bill, would you like to just pipe in on this as well?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think perfect point. Right, the dry runs are critical, right? That's something we've definitely instituted for quite some time. Just gives you that whole dress rehearsal about how, like you say, how things can go and where you might hit those sort of road bumps right during the deployments and whatnot. We didn't, my experience at MSCI and working on sort of HR activities and deployments, from sort of the IT point of view, it's been pretty smooth. I mean, I would have to say I go back to that employee experience, and
Mhm.
I guess what I would think is a couple of points. Like one is once we rolled out a new learning system at some point, and the authentication into the learning system was a little kludgy. We had single sign-on, but it required a button to press, and the button was completely sort of mislabeled and had like a Microsoft logo on it or something to that effect. It was just not super clear. And if I'm thinking this, I think then there must be like a 99% of the other people must think like this as well. If it's not clear to me and I'm the tech guy, then what's really going on? But in that aspect, I think I just would say that, as a sort of, if you're thinking IT and HR, where HR is sort of the business, that it's important to advocate for technology to make the corrections or figure out what needs to be done in order to make that experience better. So I know I'll probably keep talking about employee experience throughout this discussion today, but that to me
Yeah.
is always a significant part, and being advocates for making sure the experience is good and don't settle from, an answer from an IT person that is just that's too hard, or that's just not a priority or something to that effect. Because if people struggle to use the platform or the application that you're trying to deploy, then it's pointless, right? If they struggle to
Yeah.
use it, then they won't use it. So,
Yeah. They'll do anything to avoid it.
right.
Oh, I love this discussion, and especially with the employee experience perspective. And I feel like this is sort of like Bill, you're really just tapping into like the core of this conversation, right? Because at the end of the day, regardless of which department we're talking about here, we're talking about what is this end user experience going to be, right? Who is this for? This is for the people, whatever it is that you're launching, whatever you're doing, like the folks that are going to be using it, whether they're administrating it or they're actually interacting with it. What is that like? What does it look like? And is it something that is intuitive? Is it easy to use, et cetera? And I feel like that, especially with like product launches or new initiatives in particular, that can get lost because you're spending months, if not years, developing like buy-in to get it launched in the first place. So when it finally reaches that finish line, you're kind of exhausted yourself to the point where, oh gosh, did I forget to even think about, do people even like know what this is and understand it? Because I've been so kind of like lost in getting it over the finish line. I don't know if either of you or any of you have a thought on that, but that's something that I've personally experienced quite a bit myself, and would love your feedback on that.
So, I mean, from the perspective of I think that example I brought up is sort of with that learning system is sort of something that where you could say you got to that finish line and you kind of missed that key point, right? Where doing a learning system implementation and sort of transition from a a legacy system into a new one is a significant amount of work, right? And there's a whole load of you're just thinking about, like, how to get people familiar with it, right? How to let them know what's available, how to find what they need, right? Get them to the right learning so they can just enhance their knowledge about different tools or products or whatever it is that we're focused on. And yeah, if you're kind of, to me, it goes back to testing and making sure that people who are testing should be quote unquote normal people, right? Not a technologist, not necessarily the HR learning lead, right? Who is anxious to get through that login screen and get into the content so they can see how the content works, right? So I think bringing in just a normal, normal. I know it's probably not the right word to use, but an average person to bring into to the testing process, I think is important.
Yeah, it's that is so key because as the people who are closest to it, we're so involved in it that that stepping back to the actual user, the end user, when they get this, first of all, you're presenting your precious baby to the world, and the world's like, yeah, whatever. No, no. So involve them, get them excited. Yeah.
I love that. So in that same vein, Angelina, so let's say you've uncovered something. You've uncovered a new way to maybe make something a little bit more easier or make that employee experience more available, et cetera. And then you have folks like maybe Matt and Bill that don't know about this idea yet. What do you do to present it to them? How do you even what do you do internally within your team to kind of say, all right, is this something we want to bring to the table or not? What does that even look like?
Well, I would agree with the pilot, as with any kind of change or any kind of idea. First of all, bring data from, and the pilot doesn't have to be really an official pilot, because when you do a pilot, it takes time, budget, people, and so on. But at least have a business case, right? Some data that you bring, this a real case, and so some improvement points. So what areas has this been able to improve, efficiencies, and so on. But if we're really talking about a new technological solution, software solution, not just an improvement in the process, I think that's easier. And maybe that won't make me so popular with HR folks, but I wouldn't really recommend taking it up and without any prior alignment from with your IT partners, right? Because that could really backfire, and in the sense that security is not there on what you're proposing. So very nice, excellent, very quick for you, HR, but it won't fly because security is compromised. And I remember such times that it was so obvious for us working in this new payroll integration that this should be the way to exchange data, very easy. But in the end, we just got a very big no and no flexibility around that. So also for the sake of time and efficiency, make sure you sound check that with your IT partner before, let's say, you bring it forward as a new potential solution. So that would be my first take on this question.
Jan, would you like to contribute to this as well? And then in all fairness, I'd love to get Bill and Matt's response after the fact, because in particular, I thought the one thing, Angelina, that you mentioned was in terms of bringing the data to the IT department, you kind of alluded to trying to get some sort of testing ground in front of you, like even on a small micro level, just to get some sort of sense of how this works. I'm going to make an assumption this very quickly directly relates to what Bill's been talking about with employee experience, et cetera, but just kind of want to feed that in. I'd love Jan, then Bill, then Matt's perspective on this, and then maybe Angelina, you could tie it back up again, because this is a great conversation.
Sure. So when I was listening to Angelina, I was thinking that, so the last company I worked for was called Spokeo. and it's a big data company. Spokeo is the company where it's a people search engine is what they used to call it. So if you're dating people or looking people up, I'm not saying using the word stalking, but kind of when you're trying to find out as much about people as you possibly can without really breaking any kind of confidentiality, that's what Spokeo used to do. And our number one value at the company was clarify with data. And our CEO it was really something that he championed, and he really believed in that. And you could come to him with any harebrained idea that you might have had, as long as you could clarify it with data. And you say, well, this is how we thought about it. So you had to be intentional about it. You had to have thought about it before bringing it up to someone. And I absolutely believed it. Like I believed it and I loved it because this is how I approach everything. I rarely say anything that I haven't thought about and really tested, kind of at least in my mind. This is how you stay out of trouble, right? I always tell people in HR that what people don't know is sometimes our best advice to people is just shut up. If you would just shut up, it would be, I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but it's very true. I mean, a lot of the problems that you start, but when people say something, blurt something out without thinking about it. And so you really need to have the data behind it. And I believe that before we come to IT with something, and so if I have an idea for an HR solution, or for a solution that requires HR and IT to work together, if I were the IT leader, I would expect somebody from HR to have already done the research and vendor discovery, done the budget approval, thought about integrations, not really how to do them, but at least considered them before even thinking about the solution. And maybe even started the RFP process, depending on how your company works, right? So it's very different. And so if you do that, then you go to IT for massaging and for clearing up issues, and then before going to the final implementation. So I absolutely agree with that, and I think it's a very important approach to think about pilots and think about all those things. So yes.
Mind if I jump in with a few thoughts here as well? So I think, Jan, good. I mean, and Matt brought it up as well. I think business case, or maybe it's Angelina, but business case is really important, right? Well, obviously, what problem are we trying to solve for? But when it comes to IT, I think about this from a couple of different perspectives. One is get involved early, right? Because that would just be the first general statement, which goes back to the whole partnership piece and why that's so important, right? That you should feel comfortable to be able to come to someone with an idea and say, what do you think? Even not just, can we technically do it? That would be one. And then I think, Angelina, you said it where you were just given a hard no when you were trying to implement or come with an idea. And I hate that. Like, and I honestly, we deal with that from an IT perspective when we're working with our security team. Sometimes it's very like, no, you're not doing this particular implementation and challenge it. Like, why? Like, what about this is not going to work? Or what about this violates our security policies or whatever it may be? Because then you have an opportunity to work with a vendor of an application or with your own internal teams on how things could be done differently, configured differently. To me, I just feel like that's such old school IT. Like it's black and white. It's like, or yes, like, and it's not that, again, like I'll say it again, employee experience, right? If you're thinking like that and you're thinking about how things are going to be used as well as the business benefit of it, and you have an IT partner who has that same mindset, then you're going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, that's, I mentioned earlier in the first question of, about we like to do each other's jobs. IT likes to do HR's job, HR likes to do IT's job. But that's also a good thing from what you just said, Bill, of, have that open-minded perspective rather than and no, if it's not by this checklist, by this book, I'm sorry, that's a no. How bend, have that ability to bend, and it kind of makes me think of like car shopping, right? So I'm gonna go car shopping, and what are my selection criteria? Is it the color? Is it the style? Is it how comfortable it is? Is it the ride? Is it, Is it electric? Is it, is it easy to use? That's maybe the HR-ish sort of side of things. And then on the IT side, it's what's the mileage? How much is this going to cost me to operate? How reliable is it? I'm looking it up on Consumer Reports. I'm, all of this kind of stuff. And so this is, it's not that one side's thinking wrong, not that either side is thinking wrongly, but these are the holistic, the big picture. Consider what's it going to take. Like, we always forget operations. We always forget turning over the keys to the ones that are actually going to be responsible for running this day in and day out and supporting it. Why do we always forget them? They're always there. They always want to be part of the conversation. And now, the answer to why don't we involve some of these people up front is sometimes when we try to, it's like, put in a request, get in the queue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we got to get, to collaborate. That just doesn't work. So.
Yeah, it's great input from all of you, and built. Actually, it was a good remark from your side. It was an old school approach and an old school, let's say, leader at the time that had the big no. And in the end, we ended up after some time that, we managed to get the right data and present it to the right people. We actually got through with the proposal. And that's, Matt, to your point, that sometimes also just there's a different language there. So what would help to bridge this difference in language of the two departments? It could be, in our example, the HRIS team. So a team that kind of is bilingual, if we can say.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if it's a big organization, I'm sure there's an HRIS team, and that should be involved then in this case, if you should be the ones taking this further. So who can interpret both languages and present it accurately. If it's a smaller organization, then yes, we need better, let's say, approach, a more flexible approach from both sides, and more openness, I would say. So, yeah.
Oh, I really love that. And I'm so glad that you kind of started to segment down into, as the organizations become, especially as they start to cascade into like global enterprises, you're starting to develop not just new roles that may have not existed when they were in their smaller growth stage, but then you have like HRIS, but then you might also have like different mapping or similar departments that have different initiatives given the different geographies that they're in, different rules, regulations, compliance issues, et cetera, depending on which part of the ocean they're residing on, right? Which I think really makes the conversation really interesting, potentially complex. But Matt, Matt, you brought up something about, operations being left out a lot, and I think that's really interesting too. And it's like, so from your standpoint, and I'd love to get other folks too, it's like, let's say Angelina has a new technology stack that she's really excited about. What would be your recommendations, right? To say like, okay, here are like the boxes that need to be checked, at least from our standpoint. Like, we need this. And this will help make the conversation 10 times easier so we can collectively agree, yes, this is great. If we can accomplish this, oh my gosh, this would be amazing. But let's just make sure we have these pieces crossed off first so that we know that we can present this forward.
Yeah, well, there's the checklists. We have the third party review form, that includes things about compliance and security, and so you try to pose these questions. You talk about the language, the bilingual aspect of it there. That's where it can get really confusing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been going through the checklist or a form, and I have to go ask the creator of the form, so what did you mean by that? Because I want to answer in a way that's going to be the true right answer. I don't want to just answer what you want to hear. And so explain that to me. So even though we say, I've got scalability questions and security questions and interoperability questions and operations questions and administration questions. Who's going to own this? Who's, 2 years down the road when this something goes sideways, who is on the hook for this? From a support perspective. So I've got all these, questions in my questionnaire, but you do want to make sure that you just don't throw it over the wall at them, at whoever it is that you're asking to come to the table, and because garbage in, garbage out. Like they're going to give you garbage answers if they don't understand the questions, and then it's going to have to be a continued conversation. So that's what I feel like is the connecting the pieces of the puzzle. Specifically, like on the operations side, I find asking questions like time-based things. I know you're thinking about this now, and in six, especially, oh, the vendor says we can do this in 3 months. Oh yeah, yeah, or 6 weeks. Oh yeah, and that, and especially in a company our size, nothing moves that fast. And so you have to say, okay, when we actually get around to implementing this, who's going to be who's going to own this part of it? The IT side, we've got the business owner, the IT owner, and the support owner with any sort of application that's going to be brought in. So who are those people going to be? And typically, somebody who's, I'm the business owner, hasn't thought about those other two. Who's that going to be? Who is it typically? How do I hand over to them? What's needed to provide that necessary underpinnings of support? I need to write up all these knowledge base articles. I need to have procedures. I need to, how's this all going to work? And you don't want, because that can kill an idea, right? If you throw that whole, 300-page manual at them, it's like, oh, well, then it's not worth it.
Right.
So let's not do that. But how do we help it along? Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
No, you're kidding. You're kidding on a key point I wanted to bring up, which is, and I see this even at MSCI, which is you hit people up as they come with an idea with a 40 questionnaire that they have to answer, and you literally want to lose the will to live. Like it's just not worth like your point, like not worth the effort to even interpret what the questions mean, like taking it from the other side, right? What did you mean by the answer? But what the heck did you mean by the question? Right. So there's a lot that we think about when it comes to those types of encounters as well. And again, we talked about a little bit earlier, right? The right time from my perspective, from an IT point of view, to get IT engaged is just early, right? Because once you do that, then again, and it doesn't need to be like at the beginning that formal questionnaire, right? Okay, we're not talking to you until you give us the answers to these 50 questions or whatever number it might be, right? Yeah, and even to your point before, you were like sort of saying, hey, you would expect the IT was expecting it, you better have that budget lined up and all that. Like to me, that's I wouldn't put that barrier up in the sense of just because there may be creative ways to get to a budget answer, right? Especially if you're talking about replacing current systems and things of that nature. So, and then I think the IT team started to keep going on this a little bit more, but the IT team may have or should have that broader view, like, okay, so HR is looking for this particular solution and it costs this much money, but we also know that the legal team is decommissioning their system and it's going to create some level of budget that's available. Right. And right, so anyway, there might be opportunities to sort of move pieces around the board to ultimately facilitate some implementations that might have been difficult otherwise.
Oh, I love this conversation, and I'm seeing once again that I should have made this a 4-day discussion. So we are approaching the top of the hour, and so I just want to leave everybody with one question, and that's if you could make one change, or if you could offer something that you're seeing in the future of making all of this easier, more or not, what does it look like in the future with this very discussion, and what are you seeing? And I would just love your feedback because I'm really just admiring all of your takes. I'll start with Jan.
All right. Well, if it's really truly in this magical world where everything happens, it'd be great if IT people knew what OSHA regulations were, and if HR people knew what Ruby on Rails was. But I mean, let's be honest, that's never going to happen. So what I'm going to ask for is maybe like a more proactive collaboration from day one, right? Or maybe even day zero. So before we do anything, that we start talking together before it becomes a problem, before we really run into any issues, before things start happening. Maybe really collaborating and trying to work towards the common goal from the very, very beginning. And if you think about it from an employee experience, it's maybe pre-boarding and onboarding. And if you think about a global thing, maybe you're thinking about security and compliance, but where people are doing the same thing and they understand the requirements from the very first day. And I think for me, that would be the perfect world.
I love that. I'm going to ask Bill next, but I just want to really quickly say that someone, Dawn, on the chat was talking about just different personality types sort of seem to find themselves in these different departments, which sort of organically create these divisions, if you will, unintentionally. Like
Sure.
someone that's really interested in becoming part of the HR team might not be someone that's really interested in becoming the IT team, and so on and so forth. And sort of like these organic separations sort of occur. I think that's a really great point. Thank you for posting that. Just wanted to call you out, Bill.
Yeah, maybe that's the magic wand situation, right? Is you give somebody an HR personality who's in IT. But in all seriousness, the one, and I'll be very quick because we're running out of time. But it's trust. Like I want HR to trust IT more. I feel like we've run into certain roadblocks because I mean, look, I understand HR data is very sensitive, but there can be people within IT who can be trusted, right? And whatever markers need to be or toll gates need to be sort of passed to demonstrate that trust, that would be very helpful. It would help us get some more things done quicker.
Beautiful. Matt.
I would kind of two things come to mind. One is, very simple, similar to what Jan was saying, is I would say connect instead of complain. Just talk to them instead of complain about them. And then the second one is the quote from Stephen Covey, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. So listen first, then make sure they get what you're saying.
Oh, I love that. The paradigm shift will forever be my favorite thing from Stephen Covey. So that's that uses pins and needles. Angelina.
So in the world of magic, that everything happens seamlessly. So I would also dream of seamless, integrated workflows between the two functions. And I think Jan mentioned a very good onboarding and offboarding. That's a very basic process, for example, for the IT and HR integrate. And this can be done with common goals and KPIs for these workflows and these processes if, let's say, trust, maturity, personality is not there. So we have the goals at least.
Oh, I love this. Jan, Bill, Matt, and Angelina, thank you so much for this. This conversation could not have gone any better, in my opinion. It's exactly the conversation I wanted to have. And I encourage everybody listening and participating, et cetera, is instead of just pondering, hey, why does this happen? Do yourself a favor and ask the question. And I think that's exactly what we're doing today. And we learned quite a bit. I can't wait to start putting together like a follow-up to everyone about this because I really had an amazing time and really appreciate all of your insights. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And, go find your IT folks, go find your HR folks and tell them thank you. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. We'll all be in touch.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.